Hello and welcome to SuperConnectivity. I am your host, Charlie Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil Parrish.
Great to have you back, Phil. Okay, a lot of news in the Marvel Universe today. A couple things I want to touch on. One thing, this is actually kind of interesting. James Gunn was discussing Guardians 2 recently, and whether or not Kang might be the villain. And he makes the point that no, we can't use Kang. Kang's over at Fox. All of these things were settled long ago. And in the article I was reading on this, in CBR, Comic Book Resources, they were mentioning how, it seems odd that Kang is not that Kang is part of Fox, not part of the Avengers universe, and because, as they point out, well, that basically Kang's first appearance is in Avengers, but Kang's persona is as Rama Tut, or is he's an ancient descendant of Reed Richards, and oddly enough, Victor Von Doom, another thing, but Kang is. What was I going to say about Kang? Kang first appears in Avengers, but his first appearance as Rama Tut is in Fantastic Four. But then they point out that Black Panther's first appearance was also in Fantastic Four, but he is very much a part of the still owned by Marvel Universe. And what this actually kind of makes this point to me that I think most people don't realize, or maybe we didn't realize until now, or I didn't realize until now, although it makes perfect sense, says that it's probably written out and enumerated what characters belong to whom. Meaning that when Fox bought the X-Men and whatnot, it didn't just say all X-Men characters and books, movie rights exclusive. It probably said you have the movie rights to Cyclops, Black Widow, or Cyclops, Kitty Pryde, Cyclops, and probably like 200 pages, and then maybe had an addendum about and other applicable, as well as the term mutant and mutant characters. And what I'm guessing is that Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were probably not mentioned, or were mentioned in a context. So for example, it might have had Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch listed as members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, or maybe just had Quicksilver, and exactly what the wording is now becomes exceptionally important, because it's clearly not just based on what characters were introduced in what books, as we've often assumed. It seems like there is some kind of delineation between characters where it's understood what characters are in what universes, which makes sense. I mean, honestly, either that Marvel would sign an ambiguous contract, or that Fox would sign an ambiguous contract that could have them losing characters like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver seems very unlikely. And I'm guessing that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are listed in some way that gave them a loophole, possibly something related to characters. Maybe it might have something to do with characters that had an ongoing series at one point outside of the So for example, Scarlet Witch had a ongoing book about Scarlet Witch and Vision that might separate her out of the mutant construct, and maybe that's also why they killed Quicksilver. You never know, because maybe they couldn't keep him for more than one movie or something. I'm not quite sure there, but it seems like there is this delineation in characters, which means that it's a lot less speculative, at least at Marvel and Fox and the other companies, as to what characters go where than would at first appear. So from us, because we don't have copies of these contracts, we guess and we speculate. But it sounds like they actually know exactly, and that's what Gunn said. He says, "Look, it's all determined long ago what characters are in what movies." Which also suggests that, barring an agreement, we're not going to see any more of other characters. We're not going to see. We'll see Scarlet Witch again, obviously, because that's established. But we probably won't be seeing any more mutant crossovers like that unless there is a deal worked out with Fox. Which, as I've said, I think after the Spider-Man deal, if that proves successful, that's going to become the model. I think that if Fantastic Four is a success, I think they're going to fold that into the Marvel universe with that ultimate version of the Fantastic Four and into the MCU, because they probably shot that carefully to prevent the possibility of not being able to swing over into the MCU if that became a possibility. Because I'm sure there's a lot of behind the scenes negotiations with everybody about what they want to do, and exactly what they do with the Fantastic Four, what they do with the X-Men going forward, because they are approaching a point where they do need to reboot the X-Men because Wolverine's getting old. Wolverine's getting too old for this stuff. So it seems to me that the characters are enumerated and delineated as to where they can go and what they can do. And that, I think, is a revelation to us, that it is a lot more solid than just, oh, this character appeared here, and this is where there's wiggle room, and this is what we can do. I think that, Disney had wiggle room with the original Human Torch, but then they didn't go and put the original Human Torch. They just had a cameo for him in the Captain America movie. And I think they had wiggle room on Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, though exactly which I'm guessing means that they were somehow left off of the contract with Fox, or that their rights were non-exclusive with Fox, which is also a possibility that maybe some characters had non-exclusive rights or rights in a different context. That I don't think there'll be a lot more of what we can finagle into this without actually seeing the contract, because I'm sure Disney's lawyers have squeezed everything they could out of it. Yes, but I do think that going forward there is going to be this effort once the Spider-Man movie comes out under Marvel's banner, and that proves profitable for both Sony and Marvel. I think that the next thing will be integrating the rest of it. And I think what they'll probably do is you'll get a Spider-Man movie, you will get a solo Hulk movie, because they'll do that. They'll do the same deal with Paramount, where they're going to say, and Paramount has had essentially that deal where they own the Hulk, but they're loaning him out to the Marvel Universe because they don't want to make a Hulk film. Mm. And I think if they can show that they can do good with the Hulk, if Marvel can really do a good Hulk film, and for what it's worth, Incredible Hulk was not a bad Hulk film. With Edward Norton, they just definitely Norton was a real pain on that set, apparently. Just completely rewriting the script, and you got to be careful. Don't let an actor rewrite the script. It's just bad idea.
Well,
although they let Paul Rudd do it, but I guess maybe he was cooler about the whole thing.
Really? Paul Rudd did.
Yeah, Paul Rudd did some work on it. I think some actors do that just so they can get the credit, because it's like union rules. You get your name on that, and then you get an extra nickel on it. And so he adds a couple of jokes here and there, enough to get his name on it, and then he gets some extra clout, because he can say he was one of the writers on it. So if it wins an Oscar. Come on, Ant-Man. If it wins an Oscar, then Paul Rudd gets to go up for that as well. And Rocky won an Oscar, so don't ever think a genre piece can't win an Oscar. So yeah, you say that now, but Ant-Man could surprise us all. But I guess when Norton did it, he wasn't just looking for the credit. He wanted to just completely rewrite it and added characters that had no place there, and like Omar from The Wire has a whole scene that got cut, that he basically wrote a whole scene, they shot a whole scene, and then they just cut out that whole scene because it just did not make sense to have Omar from The Wire show up in the middle of Harlem and try to get between the Hulk and Abomination. Oh, boy. Anyway, but speaking of the MCU, other news that we got out this week is it's rumored that Tilda Swinton has been cast as the Ancient One. And I've got a lot of feelings about this. But one thing that this really strikes me, and this is for anyone who wants to say, oh, there's not this white male sense of privilege in comic books. This is, to me, this and Stick, to me, is evidence of the white male privilege in comics. Because Johnny Storm becoming African American was hugely controversial among white male comic book fans who aren't racist. They're not racist, but they just feel it's tampering with the nature of the character, and yet making the Ancient One or the Stick into white people doesn't bother the character at all. Which makes, and it really, to me, that's the real story that is being ignored, is that all these guys that were up in arms about Johnny Storm, all the people that were up in arms about Nick Fury, and there were a lot. I've been to the internet. There were a lot of people that had a very strong opinions on making these characters black. And they always said, oh, it's because I believe in the integrity of the comic and the character, but then where are they now? If you truly believe in the comic and the integrity of the comic and the character, why aren't you upset about Stick and the Ancient One? And the answer is because they made them white, and so they're not upset about that. And to me, that is the most damning evidence that when people are protesting about Johnny Storm, generally speaking, it's not about the breaking of continuity. It's about the fact that, oh no, this character is not white anymore. And I say this as a guy who actually, I was not 100% on board with the Johnny Storm move, simply because I did feel that there was an aspect of the Johnny Storm character that relied on the fact that he was an upper-class white kid from Long Island, that he's this kid who sort of lived without consequences. I don't feel you get to live without consequences if you are a black kid from Long Island, even if your dad is a super scientist, as is in the Fantastic Four reboot. I really do feel that is. I felt that was a quality of the character. But I guess growing up rich in Long Island, the son of a super scientist, is enough privilege for African American Johnny Storm that he can still be a hothead adrenaline junkie. So mazel tov for that. But that's my feeling. Do you have an opinion on this, Phil?
I was gonna ask you first. Do you think there was more uproar about Johnny Storm and Nick Fury than there was about the Ancient One, just because their characters are better known to the general public?
Well, first, I don't know if Nick Fury was better known to the general public. Nick Fury's only other. Yeah, and trust me, no one saw that. So I don't think that the Hasselhoff Nick Fury film is a good gauge of the general public. I saw a half hour of it, and I was waiting for that film. I was like, yes, and I was like, not so much, And I watched the whole of the Red Brown Captain Americas. Hasselhoff Nick Fury did fall below Red Brown's Captain America, which I still maintain actually have some pathos and some good story. I feel that all of the Captain America adaptations, including the Matt Salinger Captain America adaptation, for their flaws, did their best in their own interpretations of the character to embody who Captain America was and why Captain America was. They were not perfect films by any means, and arguably not good films by any means, but I felt they all really encapsulated who Captain America was very well. In contrast with the Doctor Strange film, where incidentally they also made the Ancient One a white guy, and that time he was a white guy, I felt violated the basic spirit of Stephen Strange in the fact that Stephen Strange was already a really good, nice person at the start of it before he gains mystic powers. And so you didn't have a redemptive arc for Stephen Strange in the 1970s movie. So, my hope is that we do get, at least in flashback, if not actively in the story, some sort of a redemptive arc for Stephen Strange in this movie. We know that he's already been name-checked by Hydra, so he's already on Hydra's radar. As I had previously suggested, my hope is that's because he is a neuroscientist who has been unlocking the sort of mind-power connection that we have seen played out in Marvel Comics, and that's why he's dangerous, as opposed to the fact that just Hydra knew he was a powerful mystic, which, that if Hydra is aware of mysticism, that, that can have some negative repercussions for the MCU as a whole, which up until this point has been highly bound by this idea that, magic is just science that we don't yet understand. So, and so that's my thoughts on Stephen Strange. So, but now there was one suggestion that kind of struck me as interesting in this, which was that some have suggested that casting Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One is actually an attempt not to whitewash the character, but to essentially appease the Chinese censor boards, because having an all-powerful Tibetan monk be the sorcerer supreme of the universe would probably not fly well in China. That China, because of their issues with Tibet, probably would not have accepted Doctor Strange as a movie in China if the Ancient One was kept as Tibetan. Now, whether or not you had to keep him as Tibetan, personally, I actually always thought that George Takei would make a fantastic Ancient One. Like just Doctor Strange, that very powerful resonant voice of George Takei, George Takei. No, it is George Takei. Would have been great as the Ancient One, though I don't know if we could have gotten him to shave his head for it. But of course, he's not Tibetan; he's Japanese, so that might wind up with a whole other argument among people out there that they're casting a Japanese person as a Tibetan. That's not fair. But I thought that might have mollified the Chinese censor boards enough. But apparently, they decided to go with a white woman. Do you have something to say, Phil?
No. No.
But you're not a fan of George Takei? George Takei?
No, I love George Takei.
Yeah, no. And actually, I really think he's a great actor. I loved him in Heroes as Hero's father. I really thought, I really think that George Takei brings a lot of gravitas to his roles. Like he's got such a powerful voice. Honestly, and he was great as Galactus. He played Galactus in Superhero Squad, and honestly, yes, really. So he has that Marvel tie-in already. They could have gotten George Takei. Maybe George Takei passed on it, and they just said, "Well, we can't get George Takei. No other Asian is good enough for this role. Let's just get Tilda Swinton." Maybe that's what happened, but Although, as I have suggested also, I think that it might be controversial that Tilda Swinton, who's only 54 years old, is by Hollywood terms the Ancient One. It's like, oh yes, the Ancient One. Let's get a woman in her early 50s. Yeah, that is ancient. Goodness, do they even go past 50? It's
like
really.
I told you, maybe she just appears, or he or she, whatever, appears different than other people, and maybe Strange sees her as a woman he finds attractive.
That's entirely possible. I have a lot of issues with their Doctor Strange. I actually would have really preferred they went with an older Doctor Strange as well. My first pick was for Bryan Cranston to play Doctor Strange. I thought that would have been pretty awesome, coming off of Breaking Bad and going into Doctor Strange. And then the other guy that I thought, if they really wanted to go younger, the person I thought would have been really good as Doctor Strange would have been Neil Patrick Harris. And sort of playing off of that Doogie Howser idea, where Doctor Strange was this, brilliant young surgeon, who as a teenager was already the world's foremost neurosurgeon, and has just built his career since then and become a glorious womanizer and cocky as all heck, and then of course loses as the story goes. Gets Nick Fury, while he's escaping Hydra, runs his car off the road. He gets that minor nerve damage because nobody but him had the skills to fix his nerves, and so he goes off the rails after that. You know, I thought that would be a great tie-in. If it's as they cut back to just Benedict Cumberbatch in the car talking on the cell phone. Yeah, I'll be there in a minute. Then all of a sudden Nick Fury's car just screams out of left field and rolls his car, or the Hydra roll his car. Uh, yeah, that would have, and that it's just that great interconnectivity tie-in. But that
Do you think
is.
they want to go young? Just because, like, they already have the Marvel Universe planned out for, like, the next 13 years at least?
Yeah, no, and I get that that's why they're going for it, too. I'm just, I guess if you're going to go young, then, like I said, then go all the way young. Then get a Doogie Howser Doctor Strange, or get some, and like I said, I mean, if you want to go young, then you can play on that with that Neil Patrick Harris, who I thought would have been great. You had to dye his hair black, but I think Neil Patrick Harris might have looked cool with the dyed black hair, and we'll try to do that with Joaquin Phoenix as well. But they're trying to get Joaquin for the role, and then Joaquin just did a Joaquin on them and went off somewhere. Oh well, yeah. I think they dodged a bullet on that one, quite frankly. Benedict Cumberbatch, for whatever else you want to say, he's a British TV actor. So he knows about the grind. He knows about getting work done. That is a selling point, And so I am excited to see Benedict Cumberbatch in the role. I would have, like I said, my first choice was Bryan Cranston, but barring that, my second choice was Neil Patrick Harris. But barring that, Benedict Cumberbatch is a fine third choice, since they couldn't get Basil Rathbone.
I don't know. A lot of people wanted Bryan Cranston for a lot of roles.
Yeah, well, he's a very good actor, and he was a dramatic actor. He did Malcolm in the Middle and got known for comedy. In fact, Gilligan, the guy who produced Breaking Bad, was saying that it's funny because when he was thinking about casting it, he knew Bryan Cranston as this sort of dark, brooding character from the X-Files, and really hadn't seen Malcolm in the Middle in the ensuing years from when he worked on the X-Files with him. So he cast him based on that, and then said, "Oh, he also has this very famous comic role too." Okay, so, but then again, that's very much in the MCU kind of vein, is that idea of having that guy who can be dark and mysterious, but also can toss off a quip when he has to. It's you got to have all your parts moving in the Marvel Universe, man. This is not a movie industry for the faint of heart. It's all the balls are in the air constantly, and you got to keep them all moving. And Ant-Man, if you don't open big, people are going to look askance at you, Paul Rudd. They're going to be like, good thing we didn't write that part too big in Captain America, because maybe you don't quite make it to Captain America, Ant-Man. So pressure's on. Yeah. Oh boy, poor Rudd, or poor Paul Rudd. Anyway, so. That's the whole of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think. I think that's all the news we got on that right now. Let's talk about Secret Wars, if you'd like to.
Sure.
You want to, Phil? Okay.
Yeah.
So one quick thing, because after my marking of words, we did get a preview on CBR this week for the next issue, out next week, of Secret Wars. And it's Doom and Doctor Strange talking. And Doctor Strange talking to Doom and saying, well, Doom, I know, like everyone else, that everything has always been this way, but I also know what came before, and I remember that I could have been God, too, if I had wanted it. And Doom said, yeah, but you didn't want to be God. And he says, no, and I still don't, But it makes it clear that, okay, so this is Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom from that last scene with the Beyonders. Now, is that a red herring? Is that a misdirect? Does maybe Doctor Strange not know as much as he thinks? And what does this relate to the other Doctor Strange that we saw in the most recent Battle Worlds with the Punisher, and then Inferno Logan that Doctor Strange is bonded with? So these other Doctor Stranges that are out there, what does that mean for Doom's Doctor Strange? Are these Doctor Stranges that are equal in power, and does that scare him? Or are they Doctor Stranges that he would like to ally with, perhaps to restore the universe as it should be? It's a very interesting question. And I, for one, want answers. Now, does that prevent my original theory of Reed Richards being Doctor Doom being true? Pretty much, yes, it does. But you never know. There might be some more to that story than we quite yet know. Like I said, it didn't look like at the end of Doctor Doom versus the Beyonders that Doctor Doom came out on top, but we're going to have to see what happens. That's in next week's Secret Wars. Do you ever read the digital previews that they give you on various locations, Phil?
No, not usually.
Not usually. Oh, okay. Yeah, see, I'm very obsessive about those things, so I read those. Now, we also this week is a free gift got the Secret Wars preview, which gives us the Thor's 1 preview, which is very interesting because you've got sort of Ultimate Thor CSI tracking down this murderer. You got the preview of Ghost Racers, which honestly you don't get much story in there except for the fact that apparently they're all racing, and it doesn't give you much to go on there. I did like the Thor preview, and actually, the Thor preview kind of makes you want to pick up Thors. The idea of the good cops going back, good cops in a corrupt world. It reminds me of Bullock. He's a white knight charging into the breach, but it's a dirty, dirty world, and somehow you got to make your way through it. We got Ultron versus zombies here, and that looks interesting. We've got Tigra just basically slicing and dicing through zombies. Now, Kitty Pryde and Star-Lord. What did you think of this one? Did you read that one yet? The preview they gave for us?
Yes, I did.
Because I know you're a Star-Lord fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing I saw was Star-Lord was going in under the alias of Steve Rogers, and Drax was like, "Oh, I know a Steve Rogers." So the characters obviously know there's multiple versions of the same characters. Yes,
actually, I found that to be one of the most interesting things in there. That yes, people are aware that they have doubles throughout this world. I don't know. Drax is this be pompadoured, smooth guy. That's an interesting take on Drax. But what I do wonder, because we also get the Guardians of Nowhere story, and they give you the story we're told about the Celestial Head, and how Doom severed it. But I do wonder if that is, again, there's nothing in the story here to tell us that the Guardians of Nowhere know something different from the people of Battleworld. It presents the story that Battleworld knows, and I don't know if Angela is a Thor. They have shown Angela as a Thor, but I don't see a hammer, so this might be Angela proper. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. We got the preview of Civil War with the Iron and the Blue, and their different views on it. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what the conflict is, except for the fact that I guess Cap's in like this hippy-dippy libertarian compound and Stark's in his shield, but I don't necessarily see why everyone's fighting. I guess they are. I mean, that's the plot line, but it seems like, okay, well, don't hurt nobody or we're going to have to smack you around. Or you have to go to a school or we're going to smack you around. It seems like at the end of the day, they both have their rules, and they both end in, we're going to smack you around if you don't do what we tell you. So I don't see what all the fighting is about. We got our preview of Spider-Man Renew Your Vows. That looks kind of cool. Although, again, we don't get much storyline. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought it was interesting that their daughter isn't May, it's Annie.
Yes, I found that odd, too. But maybe May Parker's still alive in here, and they just decided not to name her after that. One thing, I think this is one of those stories where I think it's going to be less about Battleworld and more about just the slice of life of people living in Battleworld, which might be a very interesting book. It's definitely one I'm interested in. We got the Future Imperfect book coming out with Maestro turning into Bruce Banner, which I found very interesting. And another interesting point about hair and Hulks, because we see that Bruce Banner has his full head of hair, but Maestro is balding. What is going on with Hulk hair, man? I don't get it. We got the little Marvel
And they thought he
preview.
was.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yes. Well, because he's an old guy with an
I was
eye
gonna
patch.
say. Yeah, they thought he was Odin. So in some parts of Battle World, they know Odin.
Well, maybe Odin is missing. Yes. So what happened to Odin? That's going to be an interesting question. That might come up here. Yes. Well, they do know Odin. How could you not know Odin? Everybody loves Odin. But again, like I said, in Wolverine, in Old Man Logan, we see the Thor's hammer. Whomsoever can lift this hammer, if he be worthy, shall have the power of Thor. God of Thunder, Bob. Yes, definitely listen to All New Marvel Roundup, kids, because we got theories there too, and you need to know them if you want to be excited and then disappointed when our theories don't happen, unless it's one of Phil Purchase theories, in which case they always happen just as he says. But this is interesting because we got the little Marvel preview, and it's a fun little bit here. But what we don't get is actually there's a couple pages more that got previewed digitally, where they actually make the point that this is on Battle World. The little Marvels are on Battle World, and they actually have they have a little theme song that goes doom 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 doom, and it's very interesting that this is part of Battle, very much 100% in continuity. Battle World, baby Marvels. Yes, we also got X-Men 92, which I'm sure you will be telling us all about next week, Mr. Parrish. What did you think of the preview on this one? Sorry?
I said, when it comes out in print, I'll have it because it's digital first. I don't know. It captured the mood of the 92 X-Men, but I mean, it's basically them playing laser tag.
Yeah, that was kind of my view on it too. Weird World. Weird World was weird. We can certainly agree with that. What I found interesting was the map of Weird World and how childlike it is in its drawing. And I wonder if that's some kind of a story, if that's going to be part of the story. That the map that he has is so rough and like I said, very childlike. It's very much monsters in my closet kind of a look to it, and I find that there are all kinds of questions that are out there in this world, and like you're always wondering like what is hidden in plain sight, and this is certainly one of those things that is going to after seeing this, I wasn't going to pick up Weird World because it sounded like it's just a monster book, but seeing the map, seeing his first story, which is very much a kind of weird little fantasy, I do wonder what happens next. Marvel is not opposed to the idea of God children creating universes, so I wonder if there's something in this that is is this one of Franklin's personas? If we ever get around to the idea that Franklin, has other personas that he hops into. Squadron Sinister, got a preview for that. That looks delightfully evil. If you read only one supervillain as hero book this year, I don't know if this is going to be it because they don't look like heroes. Yes, but it's nice seeing classic evil Hyperion rip people's arms off. And then our last preview opens with our good friend who didn't realize he was going to miss the big crossover book, and he wouldn't have died if he had known that was coming up. This is why Deadpool, you always have to read the solicits. You got to know what's coming up, because otherwise, you wind up dead and like, But here he is, and they suggest that he'll be showing up at least as a narrator in his wife's book. And we get the introduction again to the Howling Commandos that we just saw in the S.H.I.E.L.D. book, except also Marcus the Minotaur with a symbiote and diabetes. Why he has diabetes, I don't know. But I guess Minotaurs can have diabetes. And that was the previews. What books of these? Do any of these books seem to you to be must pick ups, aside from X-Men '92, which we know you're going to pick up?
Well, I already had
Did any of them strike you as
list. Thor's, Star-Lord and Kitty Pryde, I think, is also on my list. Civil War, of course, Amazing Spider-Man, Renew Your Vows, Future Imperfect, like you said, X-Men '92, and Squadron Sinister.
Yeah.
That's it in this preview. Oh, on the
I want to get a lot of these books, but yeah. Well, because they have. I'm hoping that book comes out next week. I'm still interested in 1872. I don't know if it's going to make the cut, but I'm very interested in it. Which is one of the ones that we haven't gotten. Years of Futures Past looks interesting. So do you have any interest in Mrs. Deadpool and her Howling Commandos, or you're just going to walk past that?
I think I'm going to walk past it because, like you said, I don't know how much it's going to give to the bigger story. And, like, the only interest I would probably really have in it is Ghost Deadpool, and probably going to get, if you're lucky, one page of that in issue.
Yeah. We'll have to see. I think that one's going to be on my list, though, just because, hey, gotta love Ghost Deadpool. I mean, the problem is that there's so many I want, but so few I can afford. Like I said, exactly. Squadron Sinister's on my list. And I did ask them to pull it, although I thought I asked them to pull Man Logan too, and they forgot to pull it for me this week. And I wasn't looking at Weird World until I saw this, and now I'm like, oh, there might be something interesting in Weird World, so that might wind up on my list. So many things, so many concerns, so many questions. Marvel Comics, you run us ragged, but we love you anyway.
Yeah, I want to see what they do in Armor Wars.
Yeah, I mean, that
Stark messes up this time.
Yeah. Well, no, that's Arno Stark. That is Iron Man 2021. From back when 2021 was in the distant future. Yeah. So that's the problem with comic books and sliding time is, and I wonder, I do wonder if people are going to ever raise this issue that there is a 2099 and a 92 world, and what do these dates mean to people? It's very strange. There's one other thing I wanted to mention, but now I've forgotten what it was. So with that, I think we've made all the connections we're going to make this week there, Phil. I've been your host, Charlie Esser. You can follow me on Twitter at Charlie Esser. Write to me at SuperConnectivityBlog at gmail.com. And, of course, like the SuperConnectivity and the All New Marvel Roundup Facebook pages. And, Phil, where can they find you?
Well, get a hold of me, discuss some Marvel with me. Email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com, and on Twitter, I'm at nightwingpdp.
Yes. And this has been SuperConnectivity. Please connect with us again next week. We will have more content because comic books don't take summer hiatuses, so we just do this every week. Yep. See you next week.